Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro announced the precautionary suspension of the energy and gas agreement signed with Trinidad and Tobago, after the nation's prime minister reported joint military drills with the U.S., aimed at destabilizing the Caribbean. Authorities in Jamaica, Haiti, Cuba, and the Dominican Republic ordered the immediate evacuation of thousands of people ahead of Category 5 Hurricane Melissa. During the Association of Southeast Asian Nations (ASEAN) Summit in Malaysia, the Chinese government expands the free trade agreement in response to the rise in protectionism from the United States. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Sophie Fernandez from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Venezuela denounces the government of Trinidad and Tobago for orchestrating a military provocation plan aimed at destabilizing the Caribbean, in alliance with the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency. This strategy, as outlined in the executive report, appears to be a deliberate attempt to create a justification for military aggression against Venezuela. This would represent a blatant violation of the Caribbean people's sovereignty and peace. In this context, the Venezuelan authorities urged the international community to maintain a firm stance against the interventionist actions of the United States against the countries of the region, which, under the excuse of combating drug trafficking, have attacked fishing boats from various Caribbean countries. The denunciation emphasizes Venezuela's willingness to defend its territorial integrity and its right to self-determination in the face of a new U.S. interventionist maneuver. In this sense, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro announced the precautionary suspension of the energy and gas agreement signed with Trinidad and Tobago and called it a risk to regional security. The announcement was made during the inauguration of the renovated San Carlos fortress in Caracas, where President Maduro said his decision was in response to a proposal made by the Ministry of Hydrocarbons and the oil company PDVSA. The Venezuelan president also said he will submit the decision to the Council of State, the Supreme Court of Justice, and the National Assembly for recommendations to take more in-depth measures on the issue very soon. President Maduro also said the suspension of the agreement was the only alternative left before Trinidad and Tobago's prime minister's decision to turn her country in a U.S. aircraft carrier against Venezuela and South America.
Faced with the threat from the Prime Minister to turn Trinidad and Tobago into the aircraft carrier of the US empire against Venezuela and South America, there is only one alternative. I have read this report. I have approved the precautionary measure of immediate suspension of all effects of the energy agreement and all agreements related to this matter. It is a precautionary measure to which I have authority as president, and I have approved and signed it. Everything is suspended. And I am submitting the constitutional question to the Council of State, the Supreme Court of Justice, and the National Assembly to receive recommendations as head of state and take structural action very soon in this matter.
In other news, the Mexican government announced an extension of the deadline for the implementation of tariffs on Mexican exports imposed by the United States. The extension was agreed during a telephone conversation between President Claudia Sheinbaum and her U.S. counterpart Donald Trump, and was announced by Sheinbaum during her morning day press conference on Monday. The Mexican head of state explained that both governments had set a 3-month deadline ending November 1st to resolve the tariff issues, so they conversed to extend the dialogue for a few more weeks, during which they will discuss trade issues and seal the negotiations on the 54 pending non-tariff barriers, which, according to the Mexican president, are already quite advanced. And also in Mexico, the government provided economic support for approximately $1,000 to more than 70,000 heads of household as part of the response strategy following the heavy rainfall caused by a tropical disturbance. During the regular meeting with President Claudia Sheinbaum, Welfare Secretary Adriana Montiel reported on the progress of the census to support those affected, which covered 103,245 houses in 190 municipalities in the affected areas. The extraordinary rains, which were recorded between October 7th and 11th, severely impacted the states of Veracruz, Puebla, Hidalgo, Querétaro, and San Luis Potosí. In addition to the 80 confirmed deaths, authorities are still searching for 19 people reported missing. And now we have a short break coming up. But first, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Brazil, the defense team for former President Jair Bolsonaro filed an appeal on Monday against his 27-year prison sentence for attempting a coup after losing the 2022 elections. Found guilty in September of attempting to prevent the inauguration of President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, Bolsonaro's team stated that they seek to correct ambiguities, omissions, contradictions, and uncertainties in the Supreme Court's decision. Bolsonaro was convicted of 5 crimes: attempted coup d'état, attempted abolition of the democratic rule of law, membership in a criminal organization, damage to public property, and damage to protected property. In the sentencing, Judge Moraes emphasized that Bolsonaro sought the perpetuation of his political group in power, regardless of the democratic and republican norms. The Caribbean region is on alert due to Hurricane Melissa, which has now reached Category 5. The authorities in Jamaica, Haiti, Cuba, and the Dominican Republic ordered the immediate evacuation of thousands of people to safe locations, in anticipation of heavy rains, flooding, and the risk of storm surges and landslides. As it approaches Jamaica, the weather system is recording winds of up to 260 kilometers per hour. As a precautionary measure, the Jamaican government set up 881 shelters, closed all airports, and evacuated the capital, Kingston, and other cities. For its part, the Cuban government will evacuate more than 250,000 people and has declared a maximum alert in 4 provinces in the island. Hurricane Melissa has killed 3 people in Haiti and 1 in the Dominican Republic so far. Both countries have ordered the evacuation of nearly 500,000 people. As Category 5 Hurricane Melissa approaches Jamaican territory, communications officers for Jamaica Red Cross, Esther Pinnock, offered statements about the meteorological situation in the country before the imminent impact of Hurricane Melissa.
So what we're experiencing currently, intermittent rainfall. It's overcast and it's looking quite eerie on the outside. And every once in a while we have some gusty winds. But the system is creeping in, and there are areas to the southeast of the island that have already experienced fallen trees and a few incidents of land slippage. This is a cause for concern because of the slow nature of Melissa. I mean, we are waiting, and some persons are not experiencing anything, and of course that is intensifying the anxiety. But not only is she the most intense that may cross the island, but she's slow and she's wide. So all areas of the island are expected to feel some impact.
Meanwhile, the eastern part of Cuba has entered a hurricane alarm phase after Storm Melissa turned into a Category 5 hurricane. The Cuban Civil Defense General Staff reported on the measure applied to the eastern provinces of Guantánamo, Santiago de Cuba, Holguín, Granma, Las Tunas, and Camagüey. On the other hand, Ciego de Ávila's anti-spiritus and on the cyclone alert phase, after the imminent impact in the country of this tropical phenomenon in the next hours. In that sense, the Cuban authorities urge the population to stay informed about the advances and development of the hurricane and to comply with the instructions given by official social networks and national media. The hurricane is expected to hit Cuban soil between Tuesday and Wednesday. For his part, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel called authorities to carry out immediate people evacuation in the most vulnerable places, as well as protect their properties ahead of the arrival of Hurricane Melissa to the eastern part of the country.
As stated here by some of the presidents of the defense councils, the priority is the protection of the population, and that protection is guaranteed if there is an adequate evacuation. All flooded zones, low areas from dams, micro dams, all of these must be protected, and that must be done in a timely manner. It is very important to protect the population, but also to protect the property of the population. We have to find places to safeguard mattresses, appliances, and people's property. We must act quick and do it.
In other news, a 6.1 magnitude earthquake struck western Turkey on Monday. Press reports indicated that some buildings were damaged, but no casualties have been reported so far. The earthquake had its epicenter in the city of Sindirgi, in the province of Balıkesir, according to the Disaster and Emergency Management Agency, AFAD. It occurred at 10:48 p.m. local time at a depth of 5.99 kilometers. It was felt in Istanbul and the nearby provinces of Bursa, Manisa, and Izmir. Sindirgi was also affected by a 6.1 magnitude earthquake in August this year that left one person dead and dozens injured. Since then, the region around Balıkesir has been affected by minor tremors. Turkey is located on the major geological faults, and earthquakes are frequent. Moving on to Russia, the government announced the launch of its first climate forest project in the Arctic, a 20,700-hectare plain aimed at increasing carbon storage capacity. This initiative, which is expected to be a key to the ecosystem restoration, joins international efforts in both polar regions, where countries such as China and India are also promoting research and green technologies. The Office of Projects for Arctic Development, OPDA, reported that the plan will be implemented at the Peryulalsk forest station. The main objective of the project is to restore forest ecosystems, increase carbon storage, and develop a remote monitoring system for the territory. We have a second short break coming up. Before, we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, but we'll be right back with more from the South. Don't go away. Welcome back. In the context of the summit of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, held in Malaysia, the Chinese government is expanding the free trade agreement in response to the rise in protectionism from the United States. During the final day of the ASEAN summit in Kuala Lumpur, Chinese Premier Li Qiang and the regional bloc's chair, Malaysian Premier Anwar Ibrahim, oversaw the China-ASEAN Free Trade Area 3.0 upgrade protocol. The pact establishes a combined market of over 2 billion people, in addition to reducing tariffs on goods and increasing the flow of services and investments. The deepening of the trade conflict between China and the United States risks weakening global economic growth, while awaiting the meeting between Chinese President Xi Jinping and his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump in South Korea on Thursday. For his part, Chinese Prime Minister Li Qiang highlighted the importance of cooperation as a means to overcome the current global economic uncertainties.
Economic Coercion, bullying, and division, pursuing confrontation instead of solidarity brings no benefits, which will only allow external forces to divide and manipulate us. The more complex and severe the situation is, the more we must stay united and strengthen ourselves. By relying on each other and coordinating our actions, we can safeguard our legitimate rights and interests by enhancing connectivity and deepening cooperation. We can promote steady and robust economic growth.
In Sudan, over 26,000 citizens have left the town of Al-Fashir due to increasing violence, according to reports from the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Clashes between rapid support forces and the regular army intensified in the state of Kordofan and the city of Bara, leaving more than 47 civilians dead. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs urged the parties to cease hostilities, respect international humanitarian law, and ensure the unimpeded delivery of vital assistance. Sudanese groups have recently accused the Rapid Support paramilitary forces of killing civilians because of their ethnic origin and looting healthcare facilities in the west of the country. Meanwhile, the United Nations organization advocates for the activation of a safe passage for civilians in the city of Al-Fashir in Sudan. The UN reiterates the urgency of authorizing the safe transit of citizens, with the aim of giving them the opportunity to live, as well as allowing humanitarian aid to enter. It reported that more than 128 humanitarian workers have lost their lives since the beginning of the conflict, while the number of displaced civilians exceeds 26,000. The city has been left in ruins, and hundreds of thousands of people are trapped without access to safe routes to escape or access adequate assistance. In other news, Paul Biya has been re-elected President of Cameroon for an eighth term after obtaining 53.66% of the vote, the country's Constitutional Council announced on Monday. Biya, 92 years old and in power since 1982, leads the People's Democratic Movement of Cameroon. He is now set to rule the country for another 7-year term. More than 4.6 million Cameroonians out of more than 8 million registered voters cast their ballots, bringing the turnout to 57.76%, compared to 53.85% in 2018. Security has been reinforced in the capital, Yaoundé, and in the commercial capital, Douala, where 4 protesters were shot dead by security forces on Sunday when opposition supporters took to the streets to protest what they call electoral fraud. Colombia hosts the first International Biennial of Art and City in Bogotá, with the participation of more than 200 artists. The Colombian capital has become an open-air gallery under the slogan, Bogotá, Essays on Happiness. The Palacio San Francisco is hosting various artistic exhibitions, including the interactive installation Surrender, a composition by Irish artist John Gerard, while Maria Fernanda Cardoso's photographic exhibition Spiders on Paradise, presented at the Cinemateca, highlights the beauty of tiny Australian spiders. Until November 9th, the Biennale will have more than 25 venues with free admission, transforming the city into a space for discovering new experiences. Meanwhile, in Mexico, thousands of people in brightly colored costumes and skull makeup gather for the annual Catrinas Parade in Mexico City, a tribute to one of the most iconic symbols of the Day of the Dead in Mexico. Every year, the Catrinas Parade transforms the streets of Mexico City into a living gallery of Mexican folk art. The festival begins on October 31st, remembering those who died in accidents. It continues on November 1st to remember those who died in childhood, and then on November 2nd to celebrate those who died as adults. La Catrina is a skeleton, often dressed in elegant clothing, who has become a symbol of the country's annual celebration. Exoticas, comprising nearly 200 LGBTQ+ artists, stylists, and designers, was one of the more than 40 groups that marched in this year's parade. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media. We're on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Sophie Fernandez. Thank you for watching.